You're about to enter into a new world of knowledge, curiosities, and high strangeness. This is a podcast of Straight Up Strange Productions.
You're listening to Mysteries and Monsters. I'm your host, Paul Bestall. We head to Virginia on this episode as I welcome the co-host of the Bigfoot podcast and author Tiffany Doran to the show. We discuss her love of cryptids, a lifelong fascination with the strange, a family Bigfoot encounter, and much more. A big thank you to Tiffany for joining me. But before that, of course, don't forget you can support Mysteries and Monsters by signing up at patreon.com/Mysteries and Monsters. $4 a month gets you ad-free episodes, guaranteed early releases, bonus content, and more. You can also click the link in the show notes. And thank you to each and every one of you that continue to support the show. Really appreciate it. You can find Mysteries and Monsters across most social media networks. Please subscribe to the Mysteries and Monsters channel on YouTube. You can also visit mysteriesandmonsters.com for news and episodes. Our exclusive merchandise store is available via TeePublic, and you can find the link for that in the show notes too. Our intro and outro music are performed by the marvellous Weary Pines. Thank you as always to Dean Bestall for his wonderful artwork. The show is produced by Brennan Storr of the Ghost Story Guys. Now we head to the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia as we welcome Tiffany to the show. Tiffany Doran is the co-host and producer of the Bigfoot Report and has had a lifelong fascination with all things unusual. These early introductions to things that aren't supposed to exist has seen her extend her interest into fieldwork on her Virginian property, as well as crafting a couple of cryptid-themed thrillers in the last couple of years. A lifelong fascination with all things hairy in the woods sees Tiffany join me on Mysteries and Monsters. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure. I think you're one of either the first or the second person from the beautiful state of Virginia to join me. So I'm very jealous of your wonderful property that you have in those beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains.
It's definitely how do you say that? Picturesque. It goes on a postcard.
So are you born and bred native, Tiffany? You've always spent your life in this beautiful part of the United States?
Yes, sir. I have been here. I was born in 1980, and I have always been here. I do like to... I haven't really traveled much, I guess. You could say I was sheltered. So the furthest I've traveled is Tennessee. So nothing past there. And, of course, we go to Virginia Beach for vacation. We actually just came back from Virginia Beach. It was beautiful. I love the ocean.
Well, I think sometimes it's difficult, I think, unless you've been to America or you know what certain states are like, it's difficult to understand why people don't travel that much. But there are certain states that if I lived in America, I don't think I'd ever leave the borders of.
Yes. Well, and you'd be surprised. You can be in one state and it takes you hours to get to another portion of the same state.
Yes. Americans' driving abilities and their attitude to driving 2 hours just to get to work is something that baffles me. That's usually the maximum if we're going away for the weekend.
Right. Yeah. See, luckily, my commute is right down the hallway to the office. I don't have to worry about, traffic jams or any of that.
Yeah. It's only when you've got visitors you might have a traffic jam in the hall.
Yes, this is true.
So how long have you lived in this particular property? Because as I said in the introduction, your father sort of enticed you into the world of weird, watching late night documentaries and introducing you into things that aren't supposed to exist, Tiffany. So was this something that your father had a personal experiences that led to him sort of encouraging your open-mindedness, or did he just have a general interest like some of us have?
I wish I could tell you. I don't remember too much about my childhood, but I remember having the conversation of him, and you could always hear him making offhanded comments about UFOs and Bigfoot and, things of that nature. But he was in Vietnam, and, they had rock apes over there. Like, well, maybe That's what got him started in it. And then he had me watch Harry and the Hendersons. I was sold. I wanted my own personal Harry. I fell in love with that character. And we lived in the county, so we backed up against woods. Everything's a golf course over there now, but I remember bits and pieces of going back and playing in the woods and, looking for Harry, and I never found him. But it just kind of, and then we would have conversations about it and different things like that, but he never really told me 100% whether or not he had ever experienced anything. So I'm not sure.
Do you think I think Virginia is one of those states that often gets overlooked when we dive into the world of Bigfoot? Because I think unless you are immersed in it, you can't, the eastern seaboard tends to get overlooked quite a lot, really, apart from some notable cases. And obviously you've got the skunk apes down in Florida, and some notable cases in Georgia. But obviously Virginia, especially with the Blue Ridge Mountains, has a long history of people encountering it, going all the way back to the tribes that lived there as well. These are not, as is often put forward by certain people, modern stories. There are encounters and experiences and witnesses that go back to the beginning of the 19th century at least.
Yeah. And a lot of what you get from Virginia is the paranormal and all the haunted battlefields and, stuff like that, but not really too many things. It's not talked about as much as the paranormal is in Virginia.
Do you think that's because it's a state that's kind of considered quite a laid back place to live? You've got beautiful vistas everywhere. It's wonderful woodlands, as you mentioned earlier, beautiful beaches. It is a spectacle to the eye for the locals and visitors alike, Tiffany, and therefore sometimes these kind of states are often considered as quite relaxed and they don't seem to want to talk about it. But once you scratch the surface, there's all kinds of strange things all over the state.
Yes, there's so many things. If people would just scratch that surface and say, okay, well, let's dig in a little bit further, and I've always had that. I'm a very curious person by nature. I want to know when it happened, why it happened, how it started, all that stuff. So I'm in the best job to do that because I can ask questions. I can be like, well, what happened here and what happened here? And I can dig down to the core of this experience or this encounter. But I think people just don't take the time, especially now. Everything's so modernized and digital, and people just don't look up from their phones, I think, enough to really experience anything. So therefore, it's not talked about.
So for you, obviously, you've lived at your property for some time. In regards to strangeness, obviously you'd had an interest before you moved there, Tiffany. So how long have you lived there, and how long is it before you started to think, well, there's strange things going on not only outside of the house, but there seems to be things that have moved in with you guys as well?
Yes, we moved here in 2019. So we've been here for 7 years. But everything was it was just quiet, because we lived in the city for 18 years. And, living in a city, it's just hustle and bustle and bad attitudes and cement everywhere. So we moved over here to the mountains and, everything was quiet and peaceful. And then in 2021, that's when everything changed. 4 years ago was our genesis into the whole world of experiencing things. I can't say that, I didn't grow up in a haunted house. I remember my sister messing with a Ouija board when I was maybe 12-ish. She was 14. But as far as anything else, I got a job. I had experiences at my job. And then in 2021, that's when my husband had his own, the only thing we can call it is his own Bigfoot encounter out in the yard one night. And since then, it's just been this whole gamut of paranormal things after that happened. So, but it wasn't until 2021 that all that even began.
I suppose it's one of those things that when you're interested in these particular things, as we are, Tiffany, people would say, be careful what you wish for. And I suppose when we're dealing with essentially unknown creatures of whichever origin you believe them to be part of, this is still quite, I would imagine, nerve-shredding a little sometimes, because with the greatest respect, there are plenty of things wandering around the woods of North America to be afraid of before we even consider some of its more cryptid and supernatural denizens in there. So you'd always been interested in this. Mm-hmm. How did that make you feel? Did you sort of rub your hands together and think, well, I can save some money on field trips now?
Right. No, we'll see. And that's the thing. Like, I have always had this interest in it, but I didn't start like podcasting and doing any of the shows or anything until 2023. So this was kind of our, beginning, I guess you would say. And so I was able to add our own personal experiences when I started, we started doing the show. But it's crazy. It's crazy stuff because, you had said, be careful what you wish for. And I always thought, I'm living in the mountains now. I mean, wouldn't it be cool just to see a Bigfoot walk across the backyard? And I wasn't the one that got to experience that. It was my husband. I got the sneaky old ghosts. No offense if you're listening.
So what was his opinion in regards to this? Obviously, he would clearly have been aware that you were very interested in this, because I think as my partner will often sort of, well, she's quite open-minded, Bigfoot's a little bit too far for her to accept, really. What was your sort of personal dynamic with your partner in regards to this? Was he somebody that was interested into a certain point, or did he just think,
I think at the beginning he humored me, I mean, if we're going to be honest, I think he humored me. I would, watch stuff on YouTube and I'd be like, oh my gosh, look, see, I'm telling you. And then it's the open-minded skeptic, which I think everybody should have a level of skepticism. I think it's healthy to do that. But I can tell you what happened. We were mowing the grass. It's very therapeutic for me. So I always do the mowing, and he does the weed eating, and he cleans vines off of our fence. And I had finished my part, and I had gone up to sit, because we live on a downslope, just to give you a visual. So I had gone up to the front of our house just to sit and take a break. And he called me. And I thought he was just going to ask for water, because that's typical. And he was very afraid. You could hear it it was almost like a quiver in his voice. And he was like, I need to ask you a serious question. And my husband's been in medicine for 26 years. So when he says the word serious, it is serious. And I was like, okay. And he was like, do they come out in the daytime? And I was like, does what come out in the daytime? And he said, Bigfoot. Do they come out in the daytime? And I said, well, yeah, you hear of the day watchers and stuff like that. And I said, well, why? And he said, because I think I just saw one. And I'm telling you, I left that chair and was down in the backyard in like 2 seconds. I'm like, no way. And so I have some things I can send you from then, but I was recording him telling his story, and he was like, I had stopped, to fix the line in my weed eater. And he said something had got my attention, and he had turned the music down on his AirPods. And he said he looked up, it was like 2 to 3 seconds. And he said it gruffed at him and it was gone. And he said it was about 20 to 25 feet away from him, and about 8 to 8.5 feet tall. Now, we do have bears here, okay, but not an 8 to an 8.5 foot tall bear that can run on 2 feet easily. But he said when it took off, it sounded like throwing a walnut or, baseball through the leaves, and it makes that sound, and it was gone. Like it was never there. But if you're facing our fence, if you look to the right, there's a guardrail, and then you have a busy, road right there. And then you cross over into Back Creek. and then it goes up into more mountainous areas. It couldn't have gone to the right because you're crossing a road at dusk. You know, somebody had to have seen you. But if it went to the left, the only thing we can think of is we have a little alcove that dips right there near my neighbor's backyard. I'm like, he could have gone back there and just ran up the mountain further from us. But I mean, it was 2 to 3 seconds and he was gone.
So in regards to how it was moving around and where it was going then, so basically you've got this sort of dip that leads up towards your particular property, and so how big is your sort of space that you've got around your house, Tiffany?
Well, it's fenced in. I mean, we own a portion of the property that goes all the way down to the road, but a lot of our property is fenced in. As far as size, I mean, it's not small by any means, but it's not like vastly large. You know, typical backyard, fenced in backyard. Excellent.
And I suppose you're one of those wonderful properties that seems to be bordered quite substantially with woods and tree lines around you.
Absolutely.
The perfect spying place for a hairy chap in the woods.
Yes, and especially in the summer, because it is like, you've seen pictures of like the Amazon rainforest and the jungles, and that's what it's like over there, because we can cross over our fence to get there, but it's so grown up for one in the summer. It's just like instant. One day it's not there, and the next day it is so overgrown. Then we have ticks. I'm not about that life. I'm not over there. So I mean, it's a perfect place to get behind trees and just look. And we have dogs, and we have our youngest daughter's almost 16, and she's always outside. So there's plenty of things, and deer, I mean, there's plenty of things to attract them. But why it came that day, I don't know.
Well, I think it's surprising sometimes, because when you've got a busy family with pets and children and things, and you're doing your chores outside, you're doing your gardening like I find it's very good for your mindfulness to potter around the garden. You can lose yourself, but I think it's a good place to lose yourself in, Tiffany. If it enriches your soul, then I think it should always be prescribed more of for people. And I think it is surprising, even normal creatures of nature that sometimes we think are quite skittish, like deer or fox or coyote or something, that even though all the evidence and the smells will be in your yard and everything, and you'll be doing your stuff and driving about and having fun and probably barbecues in the summer and friends round and drinks and enjoying the beautiful summers you guys have there, you will occasionally just look up and see a deer walking through, and you'll think, well, hang on, why is that not frightened of me? So I'm often surprised when people think, well, surely if you've got large cryptids, they're not going to come. But often I think they might just come and say, I wonder what all this noise is. What's going on here?
I think they're curious of us. And I think that if you go into the woods to go camping, or even to go on, a research expedition, and I think if you walk in the woods with it in your head that you're going to sneak up on them, you're sorely mistaken. Because they know you're there already. So, but I think that if you go into it, lighthearted, good intentions, and you're yourself, just go out there and do human things that humans do when they go camping. Sit around a fire, be noisy. You can sit out there and be quiet, and you're not going to draw anything to you. I think they come out to you when they're curious. They want to see what it is that you're doing. And speaking of deer, a couple of weeks ago, we have deer that walk across the front of our house. We have 2 cameras on our house. So we have a deer, and we saw her walking across in front of our house. We have a rock wall, so she walks along the rock wall and eats the grass. And she kept coming back. And so my daughter we have a coon hound for one of our dogs, and she had let him out in the back. And the deer walked up to the fence to her. So she's like trying to feed it, a leaf and, become friends with her and everything. And then she came back the next day. And so me and my daughter walked out the front door where she was standing in the grass, and she walks right over to my daughter. Like, she just feels so safe with her. Yeah, it's the craziest thing. And she's over here every day. She's not intimidated by our dogs. Our dogs bark at her like crazy, but she doesn't let it bother her. So, but I think it's her curiosity. She doesn't look sick. You know, she's got good weight on her. She has a baby. She brought her baby over here the other day. It's just my daughter's Snow White. I don't know. And we've had in the past couple months, these bears that come in the front yard. You can see them bumbling down, and there's a bigger one, and then there's a smaller one. And then we've had foxes that have come over here and set off our cameras. So we have the whole gamut. I just think we need to have another Bigfoot come over. I mean, I just round it out.
I suppose when you look back at what happened with your husband and obviously where you are now, Tiffany, with your experience and understanding of how people can be viewed when they talk about their discussions, is it interesting to transition from the partner of an experiencer to being someone that speaks to other people about their personal experiences? Did you understand, or did you get any pushback when you tried to talk about what your husband had done? And did he want to speak to anybody at all? Or has he allowed you to be the conduit for that particular experience?
Yeah, I kind of started it off. I mean, he was never hesitant to talk about it, because the way we see it is, we're never going to be able to satisfy your unbelief no matter what it is that we say. But we know our own truth, and we know what happened that day. So it was easy for him to open up and say, okay, this is what we experienced. This is what we're going through, you know. So when I talk to different people on our show, I'm able to kind of combine those experiences and say, okay, well, this is what we experienced here. And it goes along with what you're saying. So it gives them validation as well as us as to, yeah, I mean, we're not crazy like everybody says. And neither are you.
Well, I suppose, you know, in the pantheon of Bigfoot encounters that are often put forward by people, it's a pretty relaxed kind of fleeting situation. It's not like, you will sometimes hear reports from people, and even for the most open-minded cryptid believer, I think sometimes you can start to scratch your head. The rabbit holes I've fallen down over the years, Tiffany, are things I try not to think about. It brings me out in cold sweats when I think about people claiming to get predictions of the future from their friend Bigfoot who lives in a cabin, or the people who are recording shoutings, but it's clearly him shouting, just putting on a very bad voice on. But obviously your husband, like you say, he's just doing some gardening, looked up, saw something for 3 seconds that told him, basically went, and disappeared. It's not like there was some kind of conversation or he chased him around the garden trying to wrap him in vines or anything. It's you know, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, it's a very non-descriptive sort of encounter. It seems quite pleasant, really. Yeah,
100%. I will tell you though, he was scared to death. He was scared. And I know that's very odd for my husband. I mean, he is not one who is afraid of things that go bump in the night. He just is not. That's not how he sees things, handles things, nothing. And when I was down there, I mean, he's 6'1", 285. I'm 5'4", so I'm like this big compared to him. He's like, please don't leave. Please stay back here. And I'm like, okay, do you just want to be able to push me in front of it and then you leave? I mean, because I'm not clearly going to be able to do anything. But he's very particular about his grass and the way he wants the yard to look, and he didn't even finish that day. We went inside. So it really spooked him.
I was going to say, I suppose as well, when you've been with somebody for a long period of time in a relationship, Tiffany, you get to know them back to front, left to right, really. You know everything about them. Did it shock you to see him scared?
100%. 100%. We've been married for 26 years this year, and he doesn't get rattled like that. So for him to come at me with this, you know, demeanor, and just, I just remember the look in his eyes. The eyes are the windows to the soul, and his soul was shaken that day. And you could clearly see it on his face and when he was talking, and he was very panicked. And so to see him in that light, because, I mean, he's a road medic, he's seen awful things. So for him to be able to just, have this emotion, it's very strange. And it caught me 100% off guard.
Well, as you say, his personal experience through, as most of us have got friends and relatives who work in the medical field, and there for the grace of God go them, because they have to deal with situations and scenes that would turn most people's stomachs, and they seem to be not necessarily able to sort of take them out of the situation, but they because of what they're doing, they head down, they're focused, and it's almost like they're like a machine working away to deal with these life or death situations. And so for somebody like you say, who's used to seeing people in crisis on a regular basis, for a very fleeting experience to leave them that shaken speaks volumes, doesn't it?
It really does. It really does. It was 2 to 3 seconds, but he could tell you like it happened yesterday. Just like it happened yesterday. It was almost like it affected him like a trauma, I guess. Because it's still there. He can still replay it. Just easy.
And has it put him off guarding on his own, Tiffany? Or like you were saying about him wanting to be your human shield?
Not anymore.
Good.
He has since passed, the I'm scared to death, stay back here with me stage. But it did take a little bit. He would have me go out, in the back with him. We would go out and sit on the deck, and when it's dark on a mountain, it is dark. So we don't turn our porch light on, because then you attract all kinds of huge flying dragons, and
you'll find out just how many insects live in your garden.
Yes, exactly. So we just sit out there in the dark, and you can hear just crazy things off to your left, and then off to your right, and across the street, across the creek. It sounds like something's walking through there. And we're not saying it's Bigfoot, because we have so much wildlife out here. But it does put you on edge and make you wonder, okay, well, I can't see in the dark. I wonder what that really is. But he's not afraid anymore to go out to the backyard by himself.
Has it encouraged you to try and bring it back? Have you tried leaving gifts out and things like that? Or is it a case of you're quite happy with the occasional visit? Because once, as I said in the introduction, it sometimes can be a case of be careful what you wish for, especially if you've got this wonderful relationship that your daughter has with one of the local deer and her fawn coming to visit as well. I suppose, do you really want to be bringing the largest predator out there into that particular situation?
I don't. I mean, if he or she wants to come back and pay us a visit, just not come over the fence into the yard, I mean, that's fine. Don't mess with the deer, because, I mean, she has a name now. So once you name an animal, it's business.
Yes.
Her name is Pink, so we can't mess with Pink. But, I mean, if it happens, it happens, But, and that was the other thing he was saying is, if it wanted to hurt him, he said it could have been on top of him in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
But it chose not to. He said it was almost like he disgusted it. It was like just disgusted and went away. So I wouldn't venture to leave gifts out or anything like that.
It is surprising sometimes when you've got locations similar to yourselves, Tiffany, where often it's using machinery outside that tends to encourage them. I've read and heard from countless experiences over the years that they've been chopping logs, or as you guys were doing some mowing or doing some weeding. It seems that if you're using something that seems to be giving off some kind of high-pitched humming noise, often, especially when you're in a remote rural location, that often they do seem to come and go, I wonder what's happening here, what is that? And it's it wouldn't be so surprising if it didn't happen so often. And it doesn't matter where you are in North America, if you've got that kind of property or you're in that kind of location, that does seem to be one of the things that really seems to interest them.
Yeah, they're curious. It just plays into that curiosity of, oh, I wonder what that noise is. I wonder, what this is. And they come check it out. And sometimes you see them, sometimes you don't. Sometimes they could be there for a long time and you don't know they're there. Just because they're so stealthy. That's their house, so they're used to it.
Is it a case that you've been able to speak with some of your neighbours and other people in the area and seen if anybody else has had something similar, Tiffany? Or is it one of those that you guys are quite open and yeah, we've seen this and this is what it was and we're quite convinced about this? Is it just one of those sort of secrets that it's only when perhaps you're alone with people and they go, actually, I've seen one too?
No, we haven't talked to any of our neighbors about it. I mean, we don't mind talking to our neighbors about it if it comes up or whatever. But in this area that we are in, I don't think that they would be open to say that they had seen one, even if they had. Because you know how it is. People are going to think we're crazy. You can't tell these people we saw a Bigfoot. Not in this community. You're still people. You're still going to have experiences, we haven't talked to any of our neighbors to see.
How did you feel last year? Because there was a very notable, these are the things that really annoy me about Bigfoot, is the amount of attention that hoaxing gets in regards to certain ones. And there was obviously quite a famous one in Virginia, I think it was the beginning of last year, with one of the worst suits I've ever seen somebody attempt to play hoax with.
I must have missed that memo. Which one was that?
Was it somewhere like, I'm trying to think of the name of the town. Is it Winterton? There was like a really brief flap and the police just came out and said, oh, well, it's clearly it obviously was somebody pulling a hoax because it was a rubbish suit. It was a really rubbish suit, I have to say. And they were stood in a street for some reason. And I'm not really sure why, but it ended up making local news. And I thought, this is really frustrating because we've just had that terrible one, I think, the other week in Colorado, which is clearly another one. And then we had the one last summer with the people on the train who just happened to be filming a random piece of scenery and Bigfoot was sat there once again in a really rubbish suit.
Yeah, now that you bring it up, I do kind of remember something about that vaguely. But hoaxing hurts so bad because you do have the people like us and like the people that you interview or we interview that have these real experiences and these real encounters. And then you have Joe Schmo putting on this awful suit and coming out, and you're like, well, these people have been looking at you like, well, how can we believe you? Because this is going out, and then you have AI and all the red circle pareidolia. It's so much against us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's clear that I think sometimes these are designed to cause that kind of confusion and to ridicule people, which I think, not just in regards to your husband's experience, but when you speak to certain people and they've got that fear when they're telling it, even if they're sat in a house, if they're in a city and they're telling you about something that happened to them years ago, you can see the change in them when that emotional trauma kicks in. And like you say, your husband's sighting was nothing threatening. It was just very brief. But it terrified him to his core. And I think when you see these hoaxes, and usually they're rubbish, as I said, they're dreadful, I think it does these people a disservice because it makes people think that they're stupid. And more often than not, they aren't. Because with the great respect, it's people like yourself and your family and others who live in these locations, Tiffany, who know exactly what's in the woods and lives around them and knows the sounds of the night, as you sat there in the dark, trying not to attract every insect in Virginia to your property to lunch down on you all. It must be tough, I think, for people when they get caught up in that. And I would imagine when you've been speaking to people on your show and they're talking about that, I think that's the biggest fear for a lot of people, is when they try to discuss it with people who simply aren't interested, or say, this isn't true because I don't believe these creatures can exist, and therefore you're not right.
Right. If it doesn't fit in their box, if it doesn't fit in their narrative, it doesn't happen. It's not real. It doesn't exist. Well, guess what, buddy? Not everybody lives in your narrative. We don't all live in your little box, okay? We experience things. And I'm sorry that you don't believe it, but that's your prerogative. That's your opinion. But, don't bash me for mine and what we experienced. And, we talk to so many people, and it's the same way. You bring up Bigfoot and especially Dogman. Dogman's the new kid on the block, it seems. I mean, even though it's been here forever, people we're finding we have more Bigfoot encounters that are brought to us than anything Dogman. And I really think it's because now they're like, okay, well, I haven't even figured out Bigfoot. And now we have this dog in the woods that's 7 feet tall, and its eyes glow red, and it eats people, So they're quite dismissive of Dogman. But I think any encounter that anyone has is important, whether it's like seeing Patty or it's like what my husband experienced, and it's just 2 seconds. Because it's all data, whether it's a mind-numbing encounter or a brief little stint, it all matters.
Absolutely. Like you say, it's the data, because you can look at when it happened, the time of day it happened, what you were doing, what the weather was like. It gives you some information in regards to this, because there are all kinds of theories, and none of us are experts. We all just like this subject. Some people know more than others, and some people may be more well-versed with techniques in regards to going out there and searching for them or whatever. But as with any experience, I think, under the Fortean umbrella, Tiffany, none of us are experts. We can all be better read than others, and maybe have had experiences that may be slightly different to others. But I think often, one of the things I've often found, and when I've spoke to people when they've talked about, when I've covered Dogman cases, and I was fortunate enough to speak to Linda Godfrey a couple of times before she passed away, who is probably one of the most well-known Dogman researchers because of her work with the Beast of Bray Road, is that I've spoken to so many people who have interviewed witnesses of Dogman encounters, and depending who they spoke to, they were usually told that they'd misjudged seeing a Bigfoot. And then you start thinking, well, once again, as we were saying about the sceptical side of it and brushing people off, you can get it from the other believer side, where people will say, well, you can't possibly see that because I don't believe in Dogman, and therefore you must have seen a Bigfoot and misunderstood what you were looking at. Yes.
We have heard that time and time again. You didn't see a Dogman. You misidentified it. It was actually a Bigfoot. It was actually the Gugway, which is a type of Bigfoot, with the snouted kind. But I'm here to tell you, all the Dogman encounters that I have heard and that I have researched to do my book, Dogman Terror in the Woods, this is something completely on its own. I don't see how you could misidentify something like that. And it's the same with Bigfoot though, right? So you have people who experience Bigfoot on one side of the country, and you have somebody on the opposite side, and they're seeing the same thing, and they're describing the same thing. They don't know each other from Adam. They're not going to know to talk to each other and compare stories. But people are seeing the same things out there. I mean, there is something there.
Well, it is, and I think with Dogman as well, I think it's one of those things that gets overlooked, that yes, the Beast of Bray Road exploded nearly 35 years ago now. I think it'll be 35 years this New Year's Eve since Linda's first story appeared in that publication all those years ago. But there's been a long history of people talking about dog-headed creatures running around North America. You've got, obviously, the Michigan Dogman, that obviously quite close to Wisconsin and some of the encounters there. But obviously you've got some of the loup-garou stories from some of the southern states, and stories about people who were werewolves in certain other states up and down the eastern seaboard as well. It's not a modern thing, and I think often these kind of experiences can get dismissed because people don't know the history.
Right.
Whereas, I mean, even into Canada, you have stories, once again, primarily because certain parts of Canada are aligned with the French-speaking nations, and obviously they have the history of the Rougarou and the Loup-garou. And so they've been there probably as long as Europeans have settled those particular parts of North America. And some would say, well, perhaps the werewolves came with them. And if we know anything about werewolves, you would suggest they do. And then it all becomes one of those things where they seem to think that these are modern inventions. And yet, when you look back, there are stories going back centuries of people encountering dogmen, werewolves. I mean, that's the argument that always surprises me, once again, as we're talking about who's an expert, when people say, well, you've not seen a werewolf, you've seen a dogman. Well, hang on. Is there rules now? What's going on here?
Right. And I've often wondered, people talk about, I think I'm trying to not talk about 5,000 things all at one time, and my brain's like, talk about everything. But I think, you have people back in the day and years past who are saying that they've seen a werewolf, but was it really a werewolf? Was it a dogman? And they don't know another term for it, so they said. And then everybody's like, well, no, because werewolves and dogmen are two different things, because werewolves turn into werewolves, but dogmen are always dogman. And then I think Hollywood really, really made it difficult too, because they come out with all these movies, and then there's the comparisons, and like, oh, well, this is not what that is, because that is not what it looked like on TV. So it's just a lot.
Well, yeah. I mean, you only have to look at the history of werewolf films to, Lon Chaney getting bits of fluff stuck to his face is very different to how the werewolf transforms in, say, American Werewolf in London. They've changed over the years. Werewolves look more like wolves now than they did 100 years ago. I think they looked like men. Yeah. Before, whereas now they seem to be far more animalistic. And when you look at them, and when you look at how people describe the dogman, it's the leg that gives it away, whereas a werewolf seems to be just like a hairy wolf man. Right. Whereas the dogman looks like an upright canine, which is quite different. And some people would say, well, I think you're splitting hairs. But I think that's the biggest distinction, is that they don't look the same. They might facially be similar because they've got the snout and the teeth and the ears and things, but I think it's the bottom half that gives them away.
Yeah, and we had a gentleman on, and he was talking now, and he lives in Arizona, and he was taking care of he was dog sitting, and so he had went out one night, and that's when he had experienced his dogman, and his wasn't the typical, big black scary, dogman that you hear of more often. It was the ones that look like a hyena. And it was like crouched down, and he said when it stood up, it was upright on 2 feet. Clearly, it made all the nasty little poppy noises that you hear people describe in their encounter when they move. But he went back inside, and he was like, nope. And he called his buddy, and he was like, what do you have out here on your property? Like, and what did you not tell me?
Yeah. Why exactly am I here?
Yes. Am I really just dog sitting? Is this another kind of dog? I was not read into this memo, pal.
I suppose. I think for me, it's the fact, even as someone as in love with cryptozoology as I am, the dogman is the one not that I struggle with it, Tiffany, because I'm not saying that everybody who's experiencing these things is lying or they're delusional or whatever, because often they will talk about things, and you get this sense of fear from them, because they're experiencing something that in no way, shape or form in any part of the fossil record that we've discovered so far have we found anything that can even be prescribed to this. Bigfoot, the history of gigantic apes is well known all around the world. And I think, I remember speaking to Micah Hanks about 5 years ago, and I said, do you think the reason people struggle with Bigfoot is that the lineage of primates and apes isn't as sexy as dinosaurs, and therefore everybody knows about dinosaurs and how they became birds and what the difference is and how long that's gone on. But nobody seems to know anything about giant apes other than the usual suspects that are put forward, like Gigantopithecus for Bigfoot, because most people don't seem to have a real interest in how giant apes have sort of shrunk down to what we've got these days.
Right. I think it's lack of research. I think, you could look at any cryptid, you could look at, Bigfoot, Dogman are the two predominant ones. But I think in any realm of cryptozoology or even the paranormal, do your homework, do your research on this stuff, because it's like you said earlier, it goes back years and years and years. You just have to look. You have to, and it could be that things that you're looking for are, because the Bigfoot has many names, right? So you have Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, hairy man, wild man. So you're going to have to really put forth the effort to look and see, okay, well, is this what I'm seeing or is this what I'm learning about? And it's just under a different heading, because it could be that.
Absolutely. I often find it really frustrating because you only have to look at the historical record to see how far back these stories go. It's way before the 50s and 60s, before Bigfoot became a pop culture icon that it is to now. I mean, there's not much Bigfoot isn't used to sell, it would seem, from coffee to socks to insurance to all kinds of stuff, anything.
Yes.
And you only have to look, I mean, obviously you guys have you recently started I think you've got another festival coming up in your particular state, which has only recently started, but it just shows you that it seems to have really caught fire. And I think, especially when you've got states like Virginia, where you've got so much lush openness for things to have a wander about, well out of the way of anybody else bothering them. What isn't out there? Because it's the perfect habitat for something that doesn't want to be found.
Right, exactly. It's very vast. It's a very vast forested area. We live 10 minutes away from the Blue Ridge Parkway. And I want to get up there and I want to, boots on the ground. I want to go looking around and seeing what I can see and hopefully not become one of the missing 411, but I am directionally challenged, okay? But I really want to get up there and look because, I mean, we have the Star here, Star Mountain. We're 10 minutes away from that. I mean, it's like there's just so much. And there's so much that could be in the woods. But I don't know. I just don't want to get lost when I go up there.
Well, that's the other aspect as well, is of course, I think it's not really a fairly recent thing. I think some people have always kind of prescribed certain disappearances in the woods, Tiffany, to people sadly being taken by something. And you look at some of the early stories where people were taken. I mean, Albert Ostman's famous encounter from 100 years ago about being kidnapped, by the sounds of it, to marry into the family, and until he tricked them with coffee and tobacco and got away.
He made that Daddy Bigfoot so sick. He said, "I'm out of here. See ya."
Yes, I'd be running if I'd done that to a Bigfoot as well. Whether his intentions to marry his daughter or not were still there, who cares? I'm off.
I'm leaving.
But it does seem to be one of those things that I think a lot of people in the cryptid field have begun to kind of treat with some seriousness, because obviously the whole missing situation is quite odd, and there are certain parts of the United States. I mean, Alaska, you just look at how many people disappear there. And yes, I know Alaska's an extremely barren place and it's very odd, but I'm sorry, not everybody walking around Alaska who disappears is absolutely drunk out of their face and just falls off a road down a mountain. I'm sorry. 3,000 people a year don't get drunk falling off mountains. And
no. They're just trying to, again, it's the narrative. It's the narrative that they carry. It's the narrative they feel comfortable with. So that's what their answer is. It's not correct, but it's how they go about their day. And if that's how you want to feel about it, that's fine. But no, people go missing. You and I could be standing beside each other and I could look this way and then look back and you could be gone. That makes no sense to me. People who are experienced hunters who have done this their whole life, they go missing. How is that? You know, they know how to handle themselves in the woods. They know, I mean, it baffles me. And we have in our playlist section on YouTube a little blip of where we do the missing person cases. And it's like you have all these little kids and everything that go missing. And it's just, it doesn't make any logical sense. So then how do you explain that? Do you venture down the rabbit hole of there's a portal? Did they walk into a portal? Are they gone? You know, is that how that happens? There's just so many unanswered questions.
I mean, I'm always, I find disappearing people very puzzling in any set of circumstances. But sometimes you see some of the stories that come from the States and you're just thinking, how on earth has that happened? I mean, I was reading a story a couple of weeks ago about a chap who was involved in a race up a mountain, and people saw him get to the top and he never came back down. And they found no trace of him anywhere. They haven't found any of his clothing. They haven't found his body down where they think he might have fallen down. He's just gone pop, out of existence. And it was a summer's day. There were marshals there. There were hundreds of other competitors. It was probably the busiest time of year for that particular area. And he vanishes without trace. It's like he's literally, I'm sure some people have said, well, he's gone straight up, hasn't he? Something else has taken him. But it's those stories, I think, that give me the biggest creeps, because they're the kinds of ones where you think, how on earth can you vanish like that?
Yeah, it doesn't make any logical sense. None whatsoever. And we've covered several of those cases. There's just no, and like you said, there's nothing left of them at all. Their clothes, their backpacks, a shoe, nothing. They're just gone. Nothing. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah. And this is the thing about animal attacks. You know, animals aren't that particular about tidying up. They don't go, oh, I'd best clear the evidence up in case people come and find me.
Yeah.
With a grace, you know, I don't wish to sound like I'm being gory here, but there'll be bits of all sorts laying around, you know, clothes, up trees. You can tell usually by the scene what's happened in regards to an animal attack, whether it's a bear or a cougar or a wolf, or, I mean, in there, extremely rare anyway, wolf attacks at the best of times, if at all. And so, I mean, you get crazy ones like boar attacks, which are extremely dangerous for anything, but still, animals don't clean up after themselves. They wouldn't hide the evidence. They'd just leave wherever and take what they were going to have for tea.
So it's the ones that we have done, those were some of the, because we kind of throw out all of the theories when we do these, because as a good researcher and a good investigator, you have to look at everything, every possibility. So, and that's the one thing that comes up the most is it was an animal attack. They got carried up a tree. Well, no, because there's nothing up the tree. There's nothing, there's no remnants of blood. There's nothing. These people are just gone. It's like the Dennis Martin case. He was going to jump out and surprise his dad. He went behind the rock. They ain't found him since. And he's 6. Just a blink of an eye and he was gone. Like, I don't know how to explain when that happens.
Or you get stories like the kid the other year who said he was looked after by a bear for 3 days.
Yes.
Really?
No. Let's be real, Paul. Do you really think that was a bear?
I mean, I have heard people say, well, it might have. And I'm just like, what? What do you mean it might have? I'll tell you, you put a small child anywhere near a bear in winter, and I'm sorry to say there's usually one result to that. It isn't kept warm in a bush and brought berries to eat.
Exactly. Catherine Van Ost. She was 7, I want to say 6 or 7. Okay, anywhere between 6 and 8. And she was one of the missing kids. And they found her 6 days later in a cave that they had already searched. And she said that she was eating berries and she laid on warm grass and she had water. How did she have all of that? And she survived and she was okay. Well, who put her in the cave? Like miles and miles away. You know, she couldn't have traveled there by herself. And then to be able to come up with the, description of the nice warm grass she laid on, and then all the berries that she ate. How would she know which berries to pick that wouldn't make her sick?
Mm.
I don't
exactly.
think I don't think we have these very friendly, fun-loving bears that are taking care of our lost children.
Yogi is real, clearly. Yeah. The cartoons we grew up on are actually biographical. It's not just fun.
Yeah. And Boo Boo's right along there with him, right?
He's the one that gets the berries for everybody.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
That's his speciality.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I sometimes hear these and they do make my blood chill, because like you say, when you've got these people often who are very well versed with the woods and they're out with their families and things like this, and somebody just vanishes. I find it baffling, even in the scheme of, as I've said, the pantheon of creatures that do live in North America before we even get to cryptids. These people know what's out there and they take all the necessary precautions, and still people seem to just vanish off the face of the earth completely. And sometimes it gives me a real chill runs up and down my spine when I hear some of these particular stories.
Right. Well, we had covered, and I can't remember his name. I can see his face, but I can't remember his name. He had went on a hunting trip with his family like he had every year. They left him. He was older, so they had left him sitting on a log, and he had his gun. He was in orange. He's very well versed on hunting in the woods and all of that. And they came back, and he wasn't there. Mm. They grid searched the whole I think it was like 5 miles around, and never found him. Mm. And it's like, how do you? But there was another one that we had done in almost the same scenario, but he was left out into in the open, not really wooded, and they came back to get him, and he was gone. Mm. And it's like, and these people who go missing, they have walkie-talkies on them. They could call for help, but it's just radio silence, and they're gone. And they're wearing bright orange. Like, you're not even finding them wearing bright fluorescent orange colors. They're just blip, gone.
Yeah. Most of them have guns on them. They'll have GPS trackers. And and the other aspect of this, I think, often gets overlooked as well, Tiffany, is the people that are left behind. Because you can only imagine what it's like if you go out somewhere with your brother or your father or your children, and something happens and they disappear. I think one of the chaps you mentioned there about that when they went on that hunting and they were all within a certain distance of each other. So he was surrounded by people with him, and he just disappeared off the face of the earth. And they were saying, I think the only thing they found was a sweet wrapper that was on the floor. And they said that wasn't like him because he was very fastidious about tidying in the woods. He didn't like litter in the woods. And that was the only trace they found of him. And nobody knew anything about it. I remember, I think it was his son that was being interviewed, and he looked haunted. I think it had been about 5 years. And he was still going out every weekend whenever he could, looking for some evidence of where his dad had gone. And it broke my heart to see that. And I think sometimes we can look at these stories and we look at the event, but the aftermath often gets forgotten. And it's these people I always feel the sorriest for, because we sometimes forget when there's been a tragedy or a mysterious disappearance that the people that are with them when that happens will carry that with them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, forever. We covered, and this is the one that really got me, but, being a parent, it was Stacy Aris. I think I'm saying her last name right. Yes.
Yeah.
That she went hiking. She had asked her dad if he wanted to go walking with her to take pictures. And it was not that far away from the cabin. And then, a couple hours passed and she never came back, and they never found a trace of her either. And I'm thinking, that would crush me as a parent to say, well, I told my child that I was too tired to walk a little ways further, and now she's gone, and she was never found. And he has to, like you said, he has to live with that and to carry that with him. Like, you could just imagine the guilt that was eating him, saying, I should have just went with her. If I went with her, she would be okay. Mm.
But it's not like he did anything unusual.
Right, because you don't expect that to happen.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
Precisely. I suppose, we've talked about your interesting visitor outside of the house, but you've got something in there. So did Bigfoot appear first and then the ghost arrived, or was the ghost there and Bigfoot was just basically a sort of cherry on the cake of paranormality that you've got going on?
Well, if the ghost was here before Bigfoot, it didn't let itself be known, and it didn't start smoking in the den until afterwards. No, the paranormal stuff started after my husband experienced what he experienced outside, and it was, just very, I would hear two men talking, and I would assume it would be our neighbors, right? Mm-hmm. But there's nobody outside. And it's not a very clear conversation. Like, you can't make out what they're saying, but you can hear two men having a conversation. Mm. The cigarette smell in our dining or den. Then we have the rose perfume smell that'll, just waft by. But the thing that started it all with the paranormal and the ghosts here was when you come in our front door, you have the stairs that go up, and then it goes into the rest of the house. So if you go up the stairs, the top left is our bedroom. We always sleep with our bedroom door shut. Carrie's room is at the end of the hall. So I was hearing pacing, walking up and down the hallway. So I thought it was her. So I texted her and I said, "Are you awake? Do you need anything? Can I get anything for you?" She never answered me. So I was like, okay. So my routine on a Saturday morning at that time was I was off from work. I would let our dogs outside, and then I would come in, fix coffee, go back upstairs, watch TV, mess around on my phone. So that's what I had done. And then that's when the pacing had started. And then shortly after that, you know how kids run up the stairs and they like stomp up the stairs?
Yes.
It was that sound. So I was like, it's gotta be Carrie. But she's still not answering me when I text her, and she's not texting me back. It's not even showing that she's read the text message. And so I'm trying to debunk it. Now, this time I was a chicken. I was the biggest chicken. So I was determined I'm never leaving my bedroom ever again. And I was just like trying to debunk this. I was like, okay, well, maybe it was the dogs running up the deck stairs. And I was like, well, no, because that would be on the opposite side. This was right outside the bedroom door.
Yeah.
And then the pacing again. And it was like somebody had walked up to the bedroom, because we have creaky floors, but it was like somebody had walked up to the bedroom door and slid their fingernail down from the middle of our bedroom door. It was a scratching sound all the way down.
Mm.
That's what started everything. And as you see back here, I'm a lover of giraffes. So yes. I have giraffe statues and a little giraffe stuffed family that sits up on our corner cabinet in the dining room, and they would all be turned different ways. And I'm like, okay, this is not cool. But then one night my husband and I were in bed. It was like 2 to 2:30. Now I slept through this. I don't understand how I slept through this, but I slept through this. My husband, we have LED lights in our room, and we usually kept them at that time on like a royal blue color. And he had jumped out of bed. The room went from like that royal blue color to red. All of our LED lights were red. And he said he felt this presence in the bedroom. Like he got up ready to fight. So again, I slept through the whole thing. He let me know at work the next morning what had happened. And he said, when you come home from work this afternoon on your lunch break, and you go up to the bedroom, he said, you're going to see that your picture fell. Because we have a wall of like, my college diplomas up there, his medical stuff's up there. But it was my diploma that fell off the wall, hit the dresser, and then hit the floor, which is, I'm assuming, what woke him up. And he was just, ready to fight everybody. And it would have been fun. And people are going to say, well, pictures fall off the wall all the time. I'm not disagreeing. However, with this picture frame, you have to lift it from the bottom to be able to take it off with the nail. It's not just going to fall. And it had been up there forever at that point. All I did was dust it. And so once you live with this for a little bit, you're like, okay, we can live together and we can be cordial. Just please don't break any more of my stuff because we've messed up my picture frame.
So, obviously, when did the aromas start? Because I think this is one of the things, because cigarette smoke these days is quite a rare thing to experience, I think, because over the last 30 years, speaking as an ex-smoker, and you as well are an ex-smoker, Tiffany, we know how things were 20, 30 years ago. It seemed like everybody smoked. More people smoked than that. These days, I remember my first experience of America, I didn't understand designated smoking zones at all. I was like, what the hell is this? Usually you can just walk anywhere here in the UK at the time. It didn't matter. But it was quite surprising to me to see how quickly it had sort of been pushed to the margins in the States. And it's very similar here now. I mean, I started as a teenager and gave up properly 5 years ago. But I'm still able. I mean, I've now got that ability that I can smell somebody having a cigarette on the street, even if I can't see them. I can, and I think, is that how bad I used to smell?
I know. This just makes you want to apologize to people like, I'm sorry I breathed on you. I'm sorry I stood beside you.
So we're quite used to it, aren't we? We seem to be, once you quit, I think you become more attuned to the actual aroma. So I suppose for you, when you hit that in your own home, that's quite shocking.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was simple. It was, we have our kitchen and you cross the foyer and you walk right into the den. And it was when I walked into the den one day and it hit me right in the face. And I was like, well, the girl that we got the house from is friends with my husband and she didn't smoke. And she lived here for a couple years. So the people who lived here prior to her, I don't think it would have stuck around that long. And I've never smelled it before. And, just reading and doing everything that I've done with the paranormal, I'm like, well, I know what this is said to mean, but I don't, that chicken in me is like, no, that's not, it's got to be in this panel in here. And it's just emanating from that. No, what? Because it's not there all the time. It's just those off-handed times.
Does it move?
It has. At the beginning there, it was just in the den. But I think it was last year, it was up in mine and my husband's bedroom. And it was so bad and so strong that I almost had to get up and leave the bedroom. And it's not ever been that bad before. My daughter has smelled it in her room and in the living room. So it's gone from just the den to it's kind of making its rounds.
Inspecting.
Yes. It's like, oh, got a pretty nice pad here. We're just going to go everywhere.
Is it like the aroma fills the room, Tiffany? Or, I mean, we've got something similar. It's been quite rare. It's probably happened twice in the last year now. But it suddenly happened quite a lot over about 6 months. It happened within about 5 months of us moving into this particular property we're in. Ironically, within about a week of us discovering that the house next door had been blown to smithereens during the war, and this house had been blown up as well and rebuilt after the Second World War. And within a week of us discovering this and the list of the victims, suddenly we had a ball of smoke in the house. You couldn't see it, but you could walk in it and out of it. It was so pungent, like you say, that I remember one occasion, it woke me up. It was that strong. It was basically like it was above my face, and it made my eyes sting, and I was like, oh. And it woke me up. And I was like, what on earth is going on? It made me think something was on fire. And then I realised it doesn't smell like fire. It smells like cigarettes. And it was. And I put my head in it and put my head out of it. And it was awful. And then within about 20 minutes, it just went, phew, and it was gone.
Yeah, it's not a constant thing. And that's how it was. The strongest it had ever been was that night I was telling you, where I thought I was just going to have to get up and leave the bedroom. It's not ever been that bad anymore. But yeah, when it first started, you could walk in the den. As soon as you pass the threshold of the den, it hits you in the face. And if you keep walking, it would go away. And now it's just like when Carrie's in the living room and she's watching TV, she can just smell it in the air. It's almost like somebody had come in, either just smoking a cigarette or like blew the smoke in the living room. So it's just, it dissipates after a little bit, but it's still there. Strange.
It is. I think, like you say, I remember I used to work somewhere many years ago, and they would have reports of, some people would say it was smoking. I remember smelling it, and as soon as I smelt the aroma, it was clearly pipe tobacco. It wasn't cigarettes. And obviously the smoking area wasn't even in there. And I'm not sure what Virginia's like, Tiffany, but seeing somebody with smoking a pipe these days in the UK is extremely rare.
Here too.
And it's just not something that's done these days. It seems to be one of those forms of using tobacco that seems to have really dropped out of fashion these days. And I can't remember the last time I saw somebody smoking a pipe. So you can kind of tell, because often people say, "Oh, well, it must be somebody smoking next door," or perhaps perhaps you've been somewhere and it's on your clothing. But well, that's fine. But it's not going to suddenly start puffing up 2 hours later whilst you sat around watching telly, is it?
Right, exactly. And neither is the rose perfume. And that has not moved anywhere except for our dining room. And that's where I have all my little giraffe statues that, were turning around in circles and being put in different positions. It's just gone from the den to the dining room. I've not ever smelled that anywhere else in the house.
And I suppose that type of aroma is quite an old-fashioned scent as well.
It is. It reminds you of the White Diamonds perfume by Elizabeth Taylor. It is, it's just that old-fashioned perfume smell. It's very strange.
It is, and I suppose it's one of those things. They're both quite old-fashioned aromas, aren't they? Mm-hmm. So how old is your property?
I did research on it, and it was built in 1972. So it's not old by any stretch of the means. If you're looking at, haunted properties, you're thinking hundreds and hundreds of years old. Now, I know you can have instances where you're in a brand new building and something pops up. But concerning our house, it was built in 1972. So I was talking to one of my friends, and she was like, well, maybe it's not your house. Maybe it's where your house is. Maybe it's the land that your house is on.
Yes.
So I started having to research that. And I did find, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget, the Monacan Nation, the Native American tribe, was here listed back to the Paleo-Indian period, indicating they were here for thousands of years in this area. So then I'm like, well, darn it. Is our house on somebody's grave? Or are we like in trouble? But yeah, that's the only thing I could find.
So there wasn't any sort of properties there 100 years ago. It's we say it's only 1972, but as we're speaking, the world in 1972 was very different to how it is now. Back in those days, those were the types of days where people would smoke 60 cigarettes a day, and nobody thought anything terrible about it. Tiffany, they'd use cigarettes as often as an accompaniment to everything they did. You'd be hard pressed to not see certain people with one hanging out their mouth every hour they were awake.
So I don't, as long as it's not threatening, we've never really felt anything malevolent from it. It was just that one instant with the pacing and the fingernail being dragged down the door. That was the if you want to call it malevolent, that was the biggest thing.
Yeah. Creepy.
Creepy. Yes, creepy. It was definitely something saying, hey, I'm here. And this is how I'm letting you know. I mean, we could have had a nice little introduction. I could have fixed you some coffee. You didn't scratch my door.
I'm going to say that'd be one hell of an aroma then. Coffee, cigarettes, and rose perfume. Blimey.
Oh, my Lord. Yes.
Perhaps you need to set out a smoking zone on your deck and see if it encourages it to stand outside and show you some respect.
Right, exactly. Please don't do this in the house.
Well, I think the last thing I want to touch on, Tiffany, before I let you go, is obviously, as I said in the introduction, you've got your latest book is out, your second cryptid fiction book. How have you found it? Because obviously your first cryptid-themed book was involving relationships with a family of Bigfoot. This one, as we touched on earlier, you've got one of the other superstars of modern cryptozoology, the Dogman, turning up with a bit of help from other people other creatures coming to help out, it would seem. Was this something that you've always had an interest in regards to writing fiction, or is it one of those things that, as you've sort of embraced the weirdness over the last few years since your husband's sighting, since you've started working on shows and speaking with other experiences, that it's just kind of a continuation of everything that you're really interested in now?
Yeah, we'll tell you how that came about. And it's really funny. If you go to, and like I said, I'll email you all the links, but if you look me up, you will see that I have 2 prior books, and they're romance suspense. Those were my Genesis books, right? And so everybody's like, well, how in the hell did you go from writing romance novels to writing cryptid novels? And I'm like, yes, that's a big leap, from one genre to this genre. But I had written my 2 romance suspense novels, 2015. And so I was terribly unhappy at my job. We'll just put it that way. It was taking its toll on me. Yes. And my husband had been telling me to quit because, I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. I was just working and taking a nap and working. And that's how I was living. Yeah. And so I had finally quit my job Mother's Day of 2023. And the day after, that is when Wayne Tetherow reached out to me and said, hey, would you be interested in writing some, short fictional episodes for, at that time we were Paranormal Odyssey. And I was like, yeah, sure. I love to write. And then a week after that, that's when Brian King Sharp from Sasquatch Odyssey reached out to me and said, hey, I know you're doing this for Wayne, but would you mind doing this for me too? We can. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. So that is kind of where that started. And I was able to really play around with the different, characters in the story. And the main character of the Unfamiliars is actually spun off of Wayne's real life grandfather. So I used the descriptions that Wayne gave me for him to make Hardy's character. And so it just kind of, grew from there. And I was able to integrate, Bigfoot, Dogman, Skinwalkers, Pukwudgies, the Black-Eyed Kids. I mean, I was able to really have fun with this book and really just let everything that I had, everything that I knew, I could write it down. Because when I write, I see it like a movie. Yeah. So I write what I see. And so with the Dogman, I did have to do a little bit more research with that one. When I write something, I want people to live it. I want them to be able to experience, what they're reading. So I wanted to give the Dogman, realistic features and heights and, stuff like that. So that is how they actually came about. It wasn't anything that I had ever written before, but it was something I was able to use, firsthand knowledge along with research to, I spent that whole summer writing the podcast. And because I'm such a fun person, I thought it would be a great idea to completely do separate endings. So if you hear Dogman Tear in the Woods and the Unfamiliars on the podcasts, the ending in the book is completely different. So I was like, okay, yeah, let's just erase this half of the book and start over again with this ending, and then we'll do it with this ending for this part. It was a good theory until you have to rewrite in a whole nother half of a book. But they came out really good.
I suppose when you do something like that, is it a case of, do you have to work out how far back you have to go to change the ending? Because otherwise, you can't just change the ending, because sometimes, obviously, book, you're following a path to a certain conclusion. And so if the conclusion is suddenly very different, Tiffany, I would imagine the pathway has to change as well.
It does. It does. You have to completely knock it off the path that you had so hard made and just start it again from there. So let me see how many pages this has. I can't remember right off the top of my head, but it's 125 pages. So I would say I had to go back and probably a good 3/4 of the book to get it to the ending for the book that's separated from the podcast. I just thought it would be something that was fun, to do.
Has it given you a thirst to look at more cases and use those as inspiration for your books? As you say, you've sort of based it on people's families that you know and sort of integrated that into it. I know I spoke to a friend of mine, Luke Phillips, who is a brilliant author, who released an incredible book last year, which you probably absolutely love, which is called Rogue. And if you've not read it...
I've heard of it.
I mean, it is phenomenal. It's one of the few books that I had to put down for a little bit just to have a breather, I have to say. There's a couple of scenes in there when I'm a bit like, oh, Luke, you seem like such a nice chap. What's going on here? But yeah. But I know when I spoke to Luke, he was using a lot of the classic situations that we've come across in regards to some of these more dangerous Bigfoot encounters over the years. Is that something that you're wanting to sort of use as inspiration and your own interpretation of perhaps historical accounts where things take a rather nasty turn?
Yes, and I've already started to. We have a channel membership, and so we have a Discord for the people who join the membership. And I had already started actually talking about it with them, and writing another book and entitling it something like Lost Mountain or something like that. Having the premise being, okay, well, this is what this group of friends used to do when they were teenagers, is go to this mountain. And now, life has gone on and they've graduated from high school and now they're meeting back up at a reunion. They go back to this mountain only to find that this mountain is not the same as it used to be. And so, of course, in a group, it's always the greatest idea to split up, right? So, so then each path that, I haven't decided if I want them to be in pairs, or I don't think I want them to be alone traveling down the path. I think I want somebody there with them. And they experience different things dealing with, or different events dealing with different creatures. Is kind of where my brain is spinning towards.
Excellent. Well, I've read the last one, and it's a damn fine read, Tiffany, I have to say.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. Well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you for the first time, Tiffany. Where can everybody find your show, follow your work, get a hold of a copy of the book, and keep up to date with upcoming episodes?
Absolutely. You can find us on the Bigfoot Report. We have a live show every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern and every Saturday at 10 p.m. Eastern. We do live interviews. Then I have my website you can go to. It's TiffanySDoran.com. There is a link on there to find all of my books. And yeah, I'm pretty straightforward. You can Google Tiffany S. Doran. You can find me everywhere on Google that you want to find me at. Although fabulous. I don't have an X account.
Me neither.
Yeah.
So that's fine. We're in good company, Tiffany. You're fine.
There you go.
Well, I shall put links to everything in the show notes as always. And I just want to say thank you for your time today, for sharing some of your experiences, some of your husband's hair-raising responses to them, and long may it continue. And I look forward to the next time we have a chat.
Yes, thank you again for having me on. I really appreciate it.